Hello and welcome to Crucible of Words for more dedicated legacy action. Today we are once again exploring a hypothetical post-banning deck. So we have a ban list announcement coming at the end of the month, and one of the cards that is potentially on the chopping block is Entomb. Entomb is a problem in the format, in my opinion, at the moment, because it enables the blue-black Reanimator deck, which doesn't have to play a very deep reanimation package. It's not a fully dedicated Reanimator deck, but it gets to play your Atraxas and your Archon of Cruelties and just win the game that way, because Entomb is such a small package. But if Entomb were to get banned, how would that impact the more traditional Reanimator decks that are all in trying to reanimate? So that's what we're exploring today, and hopefully we can put together something that still works in Legacy. So, what are we doing here? Well, we have had to make some changes because we don't have Entomb, which is both a way of putting a card in the graveyard and a card itself to put in the graveyard, if that makes sense. So if you have a big monster, you need to discard it. So that's kind of two cards you need, whereas Entomb kind of does that in one shot. So I'm trying this particular build. I have another build I'm hopefully going to try out next week, which goes down a very different angle. But what we're trying to do here is maximize the power of these legendary creatures, so Griselbrand and Atraxa. So we have to go up on the number of monsters. So by having 12, that means 1 in every 5 cards should be a monster. And then we've gone up on ways of taking cards from our hand and putting them into the graveyard. So we have Careful Study, Faithless Looting, and Collective Brutality. Collective Brutality is particularly interesting because it allows us to discard a card as a cost, so they can't be interacting with us discarding a card via the Collective Brutality. Once again, we have 12 of these, which means we are looking at having 1 in 5 cards being one of these. We have Thoughtseize as a generic piece of disruption that can be turned inwards on ourselves to put a big monster in the graveyard. Then we have 12 reanimation spells. So we have 4 Animate Dead, 4 Reanimate, and for the last one, I think I'm going for Shallow Grave. There are definitely different options you could play here, so you could play Life and Death, if you wanted to, which is just a 2-mana Reanimate, or you could play Exhume, but I think Exhume is a bit dangerous right now. Maybe Exhume will be fine after the bannings, but at the moment, so many Reanimator decks around, you don't want to be playing Exhume. So this slot is a bit questionable. This is obviously very good with an Atraxa or a Griselbrand. It's not so hot with an Archon of Cruelty, but we just have to live with it. And then we have a bit of fast mana to power things out. Our mana base is very rainbowy because we want to try and cast blue or red spells into black spells. So we've got 4 City of Brass, 4 Gemstone Mine, 4 Mana Confluence, 2 Undiscovered Paradise, which is my personal favourite rainbow land. It's a bit janky, but I think it does what it needs to here. So it's taps to add 1 mana of any colour, and then when you untap, this then bounces to your hand. And then we have 2 Volcanic Islands. Now you might be saying, why are you running Volcanic Islands here? Well, the key spells we're trying to cast on turn 1 are Careful Study and Faithless Looting. And these are blue and red spells. So we have this to try and power these out. This also helps with our sideboard plan that I'll get to in a bit. These could be other lands, they could be more Undiscovered Paradise. But I've done a little bit of testing with this one, just, throwing a few hands to see if it works. And generally speaking, this has been fine and has worked the way I wanted it to. But this is another thing you could look at here. So what we're trying to do most of the time here is just go turn 1, Careful Study or Faithless Looting, and then reanimate a big monster on turn 2. Sometimes we can do that on turn 1 with Lotus Petal. Compared to the existing Reanimator decks, we've gone up slightly on land, and we're not running Dark Ritual because this particular build, the Dark Ritual is not going to help us cast our main ways of putting creatures into the graveyard. So we've gone a little bit up on land, and we've got these effects instead. There's definitely a very different way you could build a Reanimator deck in Legacy without Entomb, and we're going to explore that in another video. Quick look at our sideboard here. We have 4 Leyline for decks that go underneath us, like Oops or Spells. We have Show and Tell, which is our backup plan. We have the blue mana, so this helps us on that front. And this is just another way we can get big monsters into play. And we're going to have more big monsters than a traditional Reanimator deck does at the moment, because we're not running Entomb, which means Show and Tell is actually better in our deck as a sideboard plan than it is in the current Reanimator decks that are still using Show and Tell as a sideboard plan. Then we have Stronghold Gambit. This is a 2-mana Show and Tell, sort of. So each player chooses a card in their hand, then each player reveals the chosen card. The owner of each creature card revealed with the lowest mana value puts it onto the battlefield. So you board this in against a deck that doesn't really have creatures. And then this is just a 2-mana Show and Tell to get one of our big monsters in. Some old technology. Hopefully we'll be able to board in a few times, like against lands and stuff like that. It could be useful, or some of the control decks. Storm and stuff like that as well. So it's just another route to our combo that gets around the graveyard. And then the other pieces we have is Firestorm and Bone Shards. Both of these can destroy creatures, and they have an additional cost to discard a card. So the cost being discard a card means that we can guarantee putting a card in the graveyard with the Firestorm or the Bone Shards, as well as being able to destroy problem creatures that may be impacting our graveyard. Things like Keen-Eyed Curator or Containment Priest, that sort of thing. So that's what these are for. And yeah, that's the list. I put a little bit of work into this one. I'm not sure this is the direction you need to go, but I want to see if we can work a deck like this without Entomb. Obviously, these creatures are so powerful that I think it's worth the squeeze trying to get them into play in a dedicated Reanimator deck. And that's what we're going to find out today. So please remember to like and subscribe, and let's just see if we can do some Entombless Reanimator. Alright, our first hand doesn't do the thing, so we're going to mulligan this one. This one makes a monster on turn 2, so let's do exactly that. And if the Careful Study gets counterspelled, then we do have access to firing off a Collective Brutality. So we'll keep this. We have to choose what we're getting rid of here. I think we want to keep the lands. We want to keep the Careful Study. We want to keep the Griselbrand. We want to keep some reanimation spells. So maybe it's the Collective Brutality that goes and we just try and Force of Will check here. I'm just trying to work out if it's more important to get our creature in the graveyard or not. I think... So what we can do is we can Careful Study on 1, Collective Brutality on 2 to duress them and see if we can resolve one of these spells. I think that means we're putting the Shallow Grave away. So Mana Confluence, we're going to have a little bit of Careful Studying. Okay, so we get to bin off this Griselbrand and probably the Gemstone Mine here. And then we have, in theory, access to Griselbrand. Now this leaves us a little bit more exposed because we're not doing it all in one turn. If our opponent plays a Reanimate, we are a little bit cooked, but that is the game we've chosen to play here. Reanimate would be a great draw, not a Reanimate. I'm going to play this out, and then I'm going to Thoughtseize my opponent around a daze, and then if we need to, next turn we can also Collective Brutality as well. A Brainstorm, so they're protecting a piece of interaction with our creature. Whether it's going to be interacting with it on the graveyard, or our spell on the stack, or even something like a Source to Plowshares. Although Source to Plowshares doesn't feel so great when our Griselbrand is already in play, because we just get to draw a bunch of cards here. Source to Plowshares, Nadu Winged Wisdom, Tamiyo. I think the problem card here is the Nadu more than anything else. So we can just ride through the Source to Plowshares because Griselbrand will just draw us all the cards we need. The Nadu also means that if they play a Tamiyo, we know that they won't be able to Force of Will. They will be able to daze though. So we have to decide if we're playing around a daze here or not. A Griselbrand. Are we playing around a daze or are we just sending it here? So our opponent obviously hid something that they wanted on top. Do I just want to go for it here? I think we don't have to. I think we can just cast this. We can get them to reveal their hand. And we'll drain life for 2. And we'll choose our opponent here. And I'm going to discard this Griselbrand. A Cephalid Illusionist is what they had here. Okay, I'm going to take one of these plows. So we would have been fine to just send it then. Meticulous Archive, where they put in this card. They surveilled away a Hedge Maze. Cephalid Illusionist is in their grip. We just clicked away. So the worst case scenario here is if they just drop a Shuko and just win the game now. Or a Nomads. Okay, Lotus Petal allows us to play around days. Let's just go and get our Griselbrand. Okay, they had a Force of Will and they've pitched the Cephalid Illusionist. So we're very much punished for not going for it last turn. But we've got a bunch of reanimation spells in our deck. We just need to find one. We've taken away their Cephalid Illusionist by doing that as well, which means they have to try and assemble the combo completely. Now, the Ezra Saga will give them half of the combo. And Tamiyo does a pretty good job of drawing cards, but they might just want to pressure our life total to make actual factual Reanimate worse. Let's see. A Ponder, not a bad place for our opponent to be. If our opponent wins this one, it's entirely because they cast a Brainstorm. Let's cast a Faithless Looting. We've already got a card we're happy to bin off. Not a big lover of what I'm seeing here. So this makes our Shallow Grave worse because it will just be an Archon. We can do this, but it will just be a mill too if we do it right now, so we have to wait another turn before we get to do anything. Our life total is certainly under pressure here. But we definitely could have won this game if we just cast the Animate Dead instead of the Collective Brutality. Maybe we're not supposed to play it safe and we're just supposed to go because it's not going to get better for us over the long term because our opponent's going to have cantrips and be able to find more interaction. Something interesting to think about. Alright, so this is going to switch off Reanimate, I think. Because we're going to take 5 here. It's going to put us to 8, which will be exactly lethal if we reanimate any of the creatures in our graveyard right now. And Animate Dead. Okay. So we can bring back a Griselbrand, but that's not actually going to help, is it? We know they have a Source to Plowshares. We're just going to take this Archon, I guess. So this is going to kill one of their pieces. We should hopefully reduce the damage we're taking next turn anyway. It was going to gain 3 life. Just plowing it straight up. So we're going to gain a lot more than 3 life. And Atraxa. Do we want to cast the Faithless Looting right now? It can't actually make a difference if we cast it right now. So we may as well wait next turn and try it. Because this is temporary mana anyway, it's going to be temporary mana next turn. So this turn we take 11. Are they gonna... They don't have another Surveil Land, so they milled over the Hedge Maze earlier, and they shouldn't have more than one. Yep. So we have one turn to find an Animate Dead or a Shadow Grave. Either of those should work, though. Reanimate, not so hot. There's the Cavern of Souls. It's going to name Wizard. All right, deck. It's your time to do the thing. Okay. It's going to be tough here because we have Pain Lands in play. Nope, that's it. Yep, so we could have just won this game on turn 2, but we decided to play it safe and it cost us. All right, to the sideboard. What hate do I think our opponent's going to have? They're probably just going to rely on counter spells with maybe like a splash of Surgical Extraction action. So we could bring in some stuff to deal with their combo if we wish. So we could play something like this. We could also play Leyline of the Voids to deal with the Cephalid Illusionist combo, which is the thing that can go underneath us. So these are the options I'm interested in. Do we need to do any of that, or is our deck just fine as it is? Or am I worried enough about what our opponent's doing that we could play the show and tell? I think I like the Firestorm and the Bone Shards here. I also like the Collective Brutality a fair bit. So maybe we're going to be trimming on some of our other looters. Maybe that's the correct way to approach this one. Because our package is now a lot tighter than it would be in a regular reanimation deck. We don't really have the air that you do in the other ones because we have to play more monsters and stuff. Careful Study is probably weaker than the Faithless Looting because we can flash this one back. So I think we're probably looking at this configuration. We'll try this. I'm not a reanimation specialist by any stretch of the imagination, but we're doing our best. It's very all in on casting this Faithless Looting, isn't it? I think we're going to mulligan this. I guess we're going to mulligan this one as well. We need some stable mana. We actually have more lands than most reanimation decks do. Okay, this works. So we need 2 lands. And all this. So we don't get to keep both of these. So I guess we have to bin off the Shadow Grave for now. Let's play this out. So this can target any target. So we can use this to kill one of their creatures or just to ping them for 1. We're going to see a Nomads here. No, we're not. We're going to see a Ghost Vacuum. All right, that is a bit of a problem for us. A Shadow Grave. That does help us with our problem a little bit. Because we can cast this in response. If we just have enough mana, we can just beat the Ghost Vacuum. So I imagine this is a one-of to fetch with their Saga, and sometimes your opponent's going to have their one-of. And that is Magic the Gathering. It's going to be tough for us, for sure. A Gemstone Mine. This is what we want, though. We just want more and more mana. So we can try an Atraxa line on our... We could have tried it this turn if we wanted to, but I want to get a little bit of value out of this Firestorm. If we can find another land, we can also play around a potential Daze. A Nomad's Encore. Sure. Cavern of Souls. Naming Wizard. So we can Firestorm right now and put this in the graveyard. So let's just ping down this Nomads. If they try and Ghost Vacuum, then we just Shadow Grave it. Now, they could have a counter spell. It's certainly possible, but this way we're playing around Force of Negation, so we can do it in the end step. And then what we can do next turn is, if we draw a land, we can Animate Dead. And then we can try and Shadow Grave over the top. So we're going to tap the Ghost Vacuum, and then we're going to Shadow Grave over the top. This could work, or it could not. But it's the game we chose to play. Not bad for a mulligan to 5. Okay, they had the Force as well. This game is looking somewhat over. They binned off a Thassa's Oracle. That probably means they have 2. Or that's their only blue card, and they're just in a desperate situation. So we have to draw a bunch of cards and try and assemble a similar situation to what we just had. An Animate Dead. Okay, so this can target any card, so we can't even reanimate one of our opponent's things. We're going to get beaten down by this Nomads for a few turns. But we have part of the puzzle solved here. Okay, we have a lot of the puzzle solved now. We just need to put a monster in the graveyard, then we can try and do the exact same play again and overwhelm our opponent. They're exiling the Nomads. That's interesting. I guess it's a creature, and so they can put it in and then have the combo sort of under the Ghost Vacuum if things go wrong. An Archon of Cruelty. Okay, we just need a way of binning this off. Archon of Cruelty is certainly the weakest of the creatures in our deck. But we have to play 12 copies of creatures because we don't have Entomb to pick up the slack. There's a Saga. Now this is a bit of a problem because this is going to make some actual threats. So we're going to need to do something soon. Hardcast Force of Will is very available for our opponent there. A Thoughtseize. So we can Thoughtseize targeting ourselves to put this in the bin, or we can Thoughtseize targeting our opponent. How do we want to play this one? So if we Thoughtseize targeting ourselves, they will see our hand as well, because this reveals the hand. So they'll know exactly what the deal is. But if we Thoughtseize ourselves this turn, next turn we can just reanimate. And we probably want to do that before the Urza Saga comes down, because it's going to kill us otherwise. So I think we are in a situation where we have to Thoughtseize ourselves. The other option is if we draw another way of putting this in the graveyard. Our client just crashed, and I've restarted it, so we're waiting for it to load in properly. Okay, so like I was saying, we could try and draw a draw and discard effect next turn. I think we just have to Thoughtseize ourselves and hope our opponent has nothing, because the Urza Saga is too scary for us. Okay, it looked like they were tapping for something there. That is awkward for us. So then we fire this off. Do they have the force here? Feels like they have the force. Okay, that's one less monster that they're going to make off their Saga though. What is this? They're just going to put the Archon of Cruelty in and kill us with it. Doesn't seem ideal for us. But their Ghost Vacuum being down could be a problem for them. Oh, they have an Atraxa on there as well, don't they? Yeah, I think we're done there. Yeah, so game one we lost because our opponent brainstormed and we assumed they put something good on top that could interfere with our combo. So we played around it and then we got punished because they immediately drew a Force of Will afterwards on the blind draw. And then the second game they just have their one-off Ghost Vacuum, which beat us there. So yeah, I think the deck was fine in that particular round. It just didn't quite come together with a few unlucky bits on the variance side. Let's go to round two. So I believe in careful study here. We've run the numbers and this should be fine. So we're going to keep this one and try and careful study something useful into our graveyard. Seat of the Synod. So we could be seeing like an 8-casty style thing, although a lot of these decks are painter builds at the moment. So we'll see what particular flavour our opponent is on. Okay, there is a painter. Grim Monolith, One Ring, yep. Right, so let's cast a careful study. At this moment we probably look like Dredge. So I would like to have access. Which monsters do I want? I think the removal monster is pretty good. And the draw lots and lots of cards monster is pretty good. But these are both kind of draw lots of cards monsters. The order we put these in is important. I think I'm going to put them this order so the Atraxa goes on top. Because we have Shallow Grave and it brings a top card back, it will always ask us which way we want to put them in if they go in at the same time. So next turn we could Collective Brutality if that's what we want to do here. And then follow it up with a double reanimation turn. That way we can get through a force as well as killing their Emery. But the problem is if they put the painter in play, then we could just die very soon. But I don't really want them to get like Grim okay, they're getting the Grim Monolith now instead. I don't really want them getting the One Ring in play. So I think we're probably going to kill the Emery and check their hand. If they play a One Ring this turn, does that change things for us? Because we won't be able to check their hand. Maybe we just need to send it. It's the One Ring. Okay. That's quite the Magic the Gathering card. Okay, we have a Reanimate and an Animate Dead here. Play this one out. I'm going to... This is target player on... So I'm just going to bring back the Atraxa. I think we actually want to bring it back with the Animate Dead here. They have a Force of Negation, sure. But we get to, next turn, fire off 2 Reanimates. There was a little bit of tension here with the Volcanic Island. We could have reanimated twice this turn. So what are you going to do with this Emery? Okay, they're going to draw some more cards first. And then I suspect they're just going to put this painter into play. It can name blue to make their forces easier to cast. They've already shown us that they have Force of Negation, so they could be having up to 8 forces in their deck just so they can get away with doing whatever they're doing. This blue painted deck is pretty good. I don't know if the video that I played with the deck is out on the channel yet, but I have played a version of this deck and it was pretty solid. Right, a bunch of Lotus Petals, whatever. If they don't bring back the painter, maybe we clap the Emery first. Okay, they're getting a copy of the One Ring. They're probably going to keep the one with more counters on. No, they kept this one. Okay. I guess it kind of ends up the same. It's just 2 turns down the line, it can be different. So they just have the One Ring combo sewn up here, where they can just keep playing the One Ring every single turn, which is a little bit on the rude side. I think I'm going to cast Reanimate on the Atraxa first, and then we can Collective Brutality the Emery. All right, we're just in. Okay, we've got some lands here. I'm going to take a Gemstone Mine, because we care about our life total a little bit. Sorcery-wise, I'd like a Thoughtseize, I think, here. Well, actually, no, do you want the... I think we want the Collective Brutality, actually, so we have 2 chances at killing this Emery. And then we take an enchantment, we take a creature. So I would like to target this, please. Okay, we're in a pretty solid position, I think. Now, the One Ring is obviously a pretty broken Magic the Gathering card, but we have a nice full grip of stuff. We can Collective Brutality and then reanimate a Griselbrand or an Archon of Cruelty. So if they play any creature, we can wipe it with the Archon. That is another few cards in their hand from the One Ring. But they got the One Ring and the Ancient Tomb biting away at them. They're probably not going to have many ways to answer a creature once it's in play, other than just winning the game with Painter. But there's 2 in the bin. So it's going to take a little while for them to find a Painter in theory, but the One Ring, they're almost halfway through their deck. You know, it's a card that finds all the cards you need. If they don't re-ring this turn, then we get to really pop them with a bunch of stuff here. So we can drain life for 2, we can duress them, and we can kill a creature if there's one to kill. We can attack first and then minus our own creature, just so we can discard both of these to have more reanimation targets. Our opponent has plenty of mana. But what are they going to do with this mana? Okay, they found one of their answers. Right, I'm just going to attack with the Atraxa here. They're just going to bounce it. And then we're going to play out a land. I'm going to go and cast a Collective Brutality. I would like to also discard an additional card. So we're going to discard one of these cards. Which ones do we want in play? Is it just another Atraxa? I think it's just the Atraxa again. So if we reanimate the Atraxa, we'll be on a low life tail, but we might be able to go again. Okay, so they have a Force of Will over there. Let's have a look at everything else. So we can just bring back the Atraxa right now. That's probably our best bet. I'm not going to reanimate it, I don't think. I think I'm just going to... I think I will reanimate it, and then we can Animate Dead the other one. Because this one costs slightly less. Okay, I'll take a Lotus Petal. There's only one instant there, which is Shadow Grave. Plenty of creatures, plenty of sorceries. I guess we just want to keep these Collective Brutalities coming. I'll take this Mana Confluence and Archon of Cruelty, I guess. Now we're going to Animate Dead our Archon of Cruelty. Our opponent's going to lose another card here. Presumably just one of the Ancient Tombs. There it goes. And then we can discard some cards at end step. We can't quite reanimate anything this turn. But our opponent's going to be dead next turn anyway. So I'll just discard this one and this one. We'll put them, so the Archon of Cruelty is top. So we can just come and get the discard and then kill and trigger. So basically we don't want our opponent to draw a Grindstone this turn. That's what beats us. I don't really know what graveyard hate our opponent has here. Okay, Manifold Key. This gives them the ability to untap the One Ring. I think our opponent's build is different to the one I played the other day. I think our opponent's build looks better than the one I played. I don't recall having Manifold Key. Obviously, it was a while ago I recorded it, even though I don't know when it came out. It might even come out yesterday for you lovely people. But it was a while ago I recorded it, and I don't recall us having this combo in. Our opponent's definitely threatening to be able to grind us out here. A Saga. Our opponent hasn't scooped yet, which isn't what I want to see. There is the Grindstone. If they wait till our upkeep, then we can just get back this Archon of Cruelty. Our opponent has drawn the majority of their deck, though. Please wait till our upkeep. Now, they probably have counter magic at this point. I'm just going to activate the Grindstone now. We have no way of shuffling. If we... So they're on 5 life, so we can hit them for 3 with this Shallow Grave in the upkeep, potentially. But I don't think that's good enough. And it will die to the trigger ourselves because we draw a card. Oh, yeah, okay. Our opponent managed to find it. I normally say that if you get the One Ring up to 4 counters, you win the game. And that's what happened there. So, what works for us here? Show and Tell is interesting. I don't know what graveyard hate our opponent's going to have. A brief search shows me that their chances are they're going to have access to Surgical Extraction and Soul Guide Lantern. Is that enough to make you play these Show and Tells? Potentially. I don't think we want the Stronghold Gambit, but we might want the removal spells. We also might want the Leylines, but I think we just need to go faster than our opponent and not really care about the Emery. So, if we're doing this sort of stuff, what do we want? We probably want... I think we need the Thoughtseizes. Board out the Careful Studies again for these removal spells. And then if we want the Show and Tells, we probably need to trim back on some of our other reanimation stuff. Maybe I don't think we need the Show and Tells. Like if our opponent has the Soul Guide Lantern, that is going to be very hard for us to beat. Maybe we do need the Show and Tells, but that means we have to make our deck worse. Do we get rid of the Shallow Graves or do we get rid of the... I think Shallow Graves go because they're not that great on the Archon. And we just replace them with show and tells. But this does lead to the occasional awkward situation where we discard a monster, then immediately draw the show and tell. Okay, this hand has a plan. Step 1, play Volcanic Island. Step 2, Collective Brutality our opponent in duress mode. Potentially we might have to discard a card to try and kill a creature if they play a turn 1 Emery. They're going to play a Chalice on 1, because we don't care about that. A Grindstone. Have you got like a Soulguide Lantern or something to follow up with? Mox Opal and 1 mana floating. This is not ready to make mana. Now it is. So now they can play a 2-drop as well. That's an absolute banger of a turn from our opponent there. There is the Emery. Painted Servant, yeah. Okay, they might be able to kill us next turn. This deck is no joke. This is the most successful painted deck at the moment. Okay, we have a Collective Brutality. I would like to duress you and kill your creature. We have to choose what we're discarding here. Are we discarding the other Collective Brutality so we can just hammer through these show and tells? I think that's probably the case. A Force of Will. Okay. Does our opponent have just a piece of mana in hand? If they do, then they can win the game. Otherwise, we can have a good crack at trying to show and tell away their bits and pieces here. Okay, yeah, they just have a turn 2 kill. Turn 2 kill backed up by Force of Will. I'm not really sure what we're supposed to do about that one. Yikes. Yeah, the hot draws of our opponent there were pretty strong in that last one. Okay, on to round 3. Right, we're on the play. This hand works. Let's keep this. I think we probably put Griselbrand as a top card because Shadowgrave and Griselbrand is pretty gross. So let's play out this City of Brass. The way City of Brass works on Magic Online is a bit awkward because it makes you have to click through the triggered ability, because this is a triggered ability unlike Mana Confluence. So what you can do with City of Brass sometimes is tap it and then in response to the trigger do something with the mana and like win the game, even if this is going to take your last life point. Pretty cool. All right, let's do some Faithless Looting. Okay, so we're going to put the Atraxa and the Griselbrand into the graveyard. Atraxa goes in first and the Griselbrand. And then we've also just drawn this lovely Lotus Petal. And then we get to bring back the Atraxa. Alright, turn 1 Atraxa. Enchantment. I'll take this enchantment. I would like a land. I guess I would take the Mana Confluence here. Oh, they've gone small again. Would I like a Thoughtseize here, or would I like more ways? We don't need to put anything else in the graveyard, really. I'll take this artifact. I'll take this Thoughtseize. And say done. And then we can play this out, and we can Thoughtseize our opponent on turn 1 as well. Now that is a very strong legacy hand. Who needs Entomb? That's what I'm talking about. That's how we drew it up. What do we see here? Nothing that we care about. The Kozilek's Command, can't do anything just yet. The Lotus Petals aren't doing very much. What am I even worried about here? Like, Kozilek's Command can potentially stop our graveyard thing, but not next turn because the Lotus Petals aren't going to do the work for them. Because they need colourless mana, they only have 1 colourless source they can have next turn. They could have Disruptor Flute. I'm just going to take the Disruptor Flute so we don't have to worry about them Disruptor Fluting our combo for next turn. And then, what are we doing next turn? We Shallow Grave a Griselbrand, attack our opponent for 14, draw a bunch of cards, win the game. That sounds good to me. Alright, turn 1, kind of victory. Our opponent showed us a bunch of stuff that makes me think that they're playing very few creatures outside of Glaring Fleshraker. So I believe we want to pivot into this plan, which probably means getting rid of Shallow Graves and Animate Deads. I believe they're bringing in Leylines. Do we want to go all the way off of the Reanimate plan? So we could take out the Reanimates themselves and have some removal spells just to kill Glaring Fleshraker. But Glaring Fleshraker, basically, if they have it, then they're going to play it out first. And the Stronghold Gambit is not going to care about that. So we could just have some removal here. But I think we probably want a little bit of reanimation because of what our opponent's doing. Do we want the Shallow Grave because it's the most over-the-top thing we can do? Because if we play a Griselbrand Shallow Grave, that's really strong. Like, Reanimate is the best reanimation spell, for sure. Maybe we'll split the difference. Maybe I just want 4 Reanimates, actually. And 1 Shallow Grave. We're not going to have the removal for the Fleshraker. It seems weird to bring in these things, then also bring in removal, right? So we're just going to roll with it like this. So let's see if we can Stronghold Gambit our opponent. What does this hand do? So we've run the maths, and if we cast this Careful Study, it should be good enough. I will keep this. No Leyline to start for our opponents. They could have fairies instead, which would be annoying. But that is the world we're living in. A Thoughtseize. Okay, I think we're more inclined to Thoughtseize than anything else here. City of Brass really wants us to pay attention to it there. Okay, what do they have here? So next turn, they play this out. They have 4 mana, so they cast the One Ring. I don't want our opponent to have a copy of the One Ring in play. So we get rid of that. And then next turn, we can potentially Collective Brutality away their Fleshraker. There is a Fleshraker. So they can untap this and go for a Kozilek's Command. Let's see what we draw. A Volcanic Island. Does that change anything here? This allows us to reanimate. So if they untap this, they can Kozilek's Command away whatever creature we have. I think the play here is to Collective Brutality. Do I want this other Collective Brutality, or do I not want to gain 2 life here? I don't think gaining 2 life is the important mode. I think we're just going to go target our opponent, target this, and then we're going to discard the Thoughtseize. So they're probably going to untap the Basalt Monolith and just get a little bit of extra value with this Fleshraker. Oh no, we're just getting the command as well. Alright, that has worked out very well for us. So now we can Careful Study into Reanimate next turn. And the chances are we hit a monster because that's how our deck's configured. Right, they drew a Lotus Petal for turn, so we just have a free roll here. Alright, Careful Study. I believe in you. There we go. And I'll get rid of this Reanimate, I think, here. I think it's the Reanimate. Let's go back. Your Friend of Mine, Archon of Cruelty. We drew another card that we don't necessarily need right now. So the reason I like the Shadow Grave is because it is splashier here. And we don't want to spend too much life in case our opponent just manages to rip a bunch of things. This does not impact us very much. It's going to name Griselbrand, I suspect. Yeah, there it is. But our opponent has nothing going on right now. A Thoughtseize. I think I'm going to lead with this Faithless Looting. And then maybe we can put another monster into play. We do not get to put another monster into play. Okay, I'll get rid of this Thoughtseize and a Collective Brutality. Doesn't matter about the order here. Attack. So we could have waited till we attacked, but if we wanted to get the Shadow Grave in, we need to do it first. So our opponent's on 8. Is it worth us flashing back this Faithless Looting right now? I think it probably is worth it right now. 2 more Faithless Lootings. Okay, I'll keep one in hand and get rid of Brutality. Our opponent is dead next turn, but maybe we find Lotus Petal or something. I guess we don't have anything that we really care about. Okay, we got the GGs. They drew an Ancient Tomb. So our deck just performed like a good old-fashioned Reanimator deck there. They had some Graveyard Hate in hand that we could puzzle through. Yeah, that feels more like it. Let's go to round 4. We're on the play. Do we get to do crimes? We get to do crimes. Alright, this is definitely what I wanted with this deck. And it is doing the thing here. Force of Will, still going to be a bit of a problem, but we have 2 ways of binning creatures. So that's a positive. And I get to cast one of my all-time favourite Magic the Gathering cards, Careful Study. Just a very simple, beautiful and elegant design that you can do so much with in a deck. Love it. Just a single sentence. Our opponent's mulligan to 6. Are we just going to make a turn 1 guy and they're just going to combo us? It's certainly possible. There are decks that can turn 1 us. Our opponent kept on 6. Let's do the thing. We'll do Careful Study first because putting Faithless Looting into the bin is a thing that we actually get to leverage here. Okay, so I'll put Archon and Looting in the bin. Play this. Let's reanimate this Archon. Alright, we're doing things here. Our opponent might scoop so we don't get to see any cards from their deck. But our deck doesn't really sideboard that much. So it's not as useful as it would be against a deck that has a load of answers in. Voltaic Key. Okay, so we might be looking at a very similar matchup to the previous one where it was the blue painter. It's certainly a deck that can beat what we're doing here. But they haven't got a lot of time to work it out. Okay, they've got some mana over there. They can play the One Ring on turn 1, which might arguably be better than playing a Archon of Cruelty on turn 1. Definitely the weakest of our reanimation targets in this deck. A Basalt Monolith. Alright, you've got mana and a Manifold Key. We have 2 choices this turn. We could cast this Faithless Looting now with the intention of trying to hit Lotus Petal, Shallow Grave, and a monster. Or we could attack first and get another card deeper. I think attacking is the correct play here. So we have more cards to work with on our Faithless Looting. Because then we can also dig our way towards Disruption and take whatever our opponent's last card is. Let's do a Faithless Looting here. Let's Spin this off and one of our many lands. And then I'll play this one out. And I will reanimate our Atraxa here. And let's see if we can get a Lotus Petal. We can't get a Lotus Petal. Okay, so what do we want here? We got Gemstone Mine, Shallow Grave, Archon of Cruelty, and do we want a Reanimator or a Thoughtseize? At this point, I think it's just a Thoughtseize. I don't think it actually matters though, because we're not going to be able to cast anything right now. So we just have to hope our opponent doesn't have something spooky that wins the game. But if our opponent goes to 3 life, let's say they put the One Ring into play this turn, what we can do is we can discard our Archon of Cruelty, wait until their upkeep, and then Shallow Grave it back to dome our opponent for 3, and then the 2 life from the Ancient Tomb plus the 1 life from the One Ring will be enough to kill them. Okay, I believe we're going to do the same play. Oh, our opponent looked a bit paintery at the end there. Maybe. I don't know. They could be dual combo. I think we're just going to board into the plan that we did last time. So this is getting rid of Animate Dead and some Shallow Graves. Keeping the Reanimates. So we're going to try this. Now, our opponent is emptying their hand super quick. So I believe in the Stronghold Gambit. Which does make us slower, but I think that's acceptable. Once we get a little bit more of a handle of what they're doing with this shell, because, you know, there's Karn Forged decks, there's the Coveted Jewel decks, there's also the Painter decks, there's some 8-casty style decks that have similar edges. This doesn't really get us where we need to go, does it? We don't have any of our cantrips to dig. I say cantrips, they're loots. They're not really cantrips because we don't go up even on cards. Alright, I think we're probably going to have to mulligan to 5 here. Our deck is explosive and powerful, so we can just try and get a nice explosive 5-card hand. I don't know if our opponent's got room for any Force of Will effects. They are very, very colourless looking, but we did see that Seat of the Synod at the end. Okay, we can keep this. We do not need 2 monsters, so this can go back. We can make a turn 1 Stronghold Gambit if we think that is going to work for us. Or we can do it turn 2 and have a show and tell for afters. If we have another land. I think I'm going to put back the Lotus Petal. I don't think we need to make a turn 1 Atraxa. Because the Stronghold Gambit might not work on turn 1. If our opponent has creatures like Emery, they're likely to come down in the first or second turn. I'm just going to play out this Volcanic Island and see if our opponent plays a creature out this turn. We're definitely going to go for the Stronghold Gambit regardless. Alright, they've got some mana. They got some more mana. What's the next step there, opponent? It's a disgusting looking One Ring. Okay. Right, here is the play that we have. I think I'll just play a Gemstone Mine out. I don't think I'll have Total Matters here, but we'll see. What have you got, opponent? Do you have a creature? They're obviously going to read this card, because you don't see this one very often. Okay, what do we have here? A creature, a land, an artifact, and then we have to choose a sorcery here. What sorcery do I want? I think it's just the Faithless Looting here. Is that true? We don't have a way of discarding cards. I think this is fine. I could try and Faithless Looting and maybe hit the right things to put another creature in play. But I think we're just going to ride on the back of this Atraxa and see if this can do enough for us before the One Ring just wins the game. Now, they have the Voltaic Key, so the One Ring is going to be going up more than one counter a turn here. So they get to draw a lot of cards, and we just need to put the pedal to the metal and try and finish them off. This is where having a Shallow Grave would be useful, because we can Faithless Looting this, Shallow Grave it, then our opponent basically dies. And drawing some cards with the One Ring. Would you like to Voltaic Key and untap your One Ring? So next turn we could Faithless Looting first, because we already have the 3 mana for our Show and Tell because of the Lotus Petal. So we can try and see if we end up with a better situation by Faithless Looting into something else. Because we could hit the Shallow Grave, which would just give us enough damage to kill our opponent. Alright, so you've got a lot of cards. You've got some mana coming in there. Ancient Tomb does help our cause, trying to lower our opponent's life total. So they're effectively on 16. And then this is going to be another 2 potentially, so that's 14. This hits for 7, so we need to find another little bit of damage from somewhere. Now, they could just win this turn as well. That is a possibility, given what these One Ring decks can do. They are bouncing our creature. Understood. What do we have now? An Archon of Cruelty. I think step 1 is going to be to Faithless Looting. Now, that doesn't really make a huge difference to us here, does it? Let's put this Archon of Cruelty into the graveyard, just in case, and a City of Brass. Any order doesn't matter. And then I'll play out a Mana Confluence and a Lotus Petal. I think Stronghold Gambit is going to be better for us than the Show and Tell here. It also leaves us with some mana open. But we definitely get the creature in if we play the Show and Tell. But our opponent gets a permanent into play. If they have a Glaring Fleshraker or something, we're going to be cooked. Okay, I think we're just going to play it I don't even think it's playing it safe. I think it's just playing what we have here, hoping for the best. A Coveted Jewel. Interesting. Okay, so how do we want to go about this one? There's no fast mana here, which is a shame. We take a creature. We take a sorcery. I think it has to be the Thoughtseize here. We take a Gemstone Mine is fine. And that's it. So I think the Stronghold Gambit would have ended up better for us. But if they have any creature, then we die. But we didn't know if they were dual combo or if they were more towards the like Glaring Fleshraker Carnforge deck. We just didn't have enough information to make the correct choice there. But if our opponent draws a bunch of cards, we might get to see what graveyard hate our opponent has, if any. Okay, so they do have Fleshrakers. So we probably were right not to Stronghold Gambit, but this doesn't feel great. They have a Coveted Jewel in play. Okay, we can just F6 this turn. We don't have any plays. I'd very much like to Thoughtseize our opponent, just so we can see what graveyard hate they brought in. So they might have a Leyline stuck in their hand that we're not going to be able to see them play. Alright, they're just playing out a whole bunch of stuff. And then they get to untap the One Ring. We're going to see a big Kozilek's Command here. Coveted Jewel, sure. Alright, they're just untapping stuff, playing more jewels, doing the whole thing. They should be able to win from this position. And I don't think it was our Show and Tell that made it so they could win. It certainly didn't hurt. But we needed to get something going there. And the Stronghold Gambit definitely would have worked because we saw the Glaring Fleshraker. Kozilek's Command, this will kill us. So we don't get to see if our opponent has Leylines of the Void in. That is unfortunate. What are we supposed to do about that? Maybe we'll have another Shallow Grave, just so we have a little bit more reanimation stuff going on. I imagine they probably have the Leylines. So we do need to have some of this Show and Tell stuff in. Okay. Keep this. One of the things we do have to consider is that our opponent has access to Kozilek's Command. So they can Kozilek's Command out one of our creatures if they have enough mana. I still think we probably are firing off this Faithless Looting on 1. If we find a Lotus Petal, we just get to make a turn 1 Archon of Cruelty, and that is obviously very powerful. Our opponent's mulligan to 5. If they put a Leyline into play, then we just have the Stronghold Gambit, and that is a reasonable way to get a nice creature into play. 3 cards. They're definitely looking for a Leyline. That's all that makes sense here. Have like Leyline and 2 creatures. That would be kind of annoying for us. Alright, so there is the Leyline. I will deploy this Mana Confluence and pass. Let's Gambit. Do they have a creature? They do not. So we are quite bolted on to win this one, I would say. Alright, they're scooping it up. Whew. That was a tough one, but we managed to win that one as well. Alright, we're going to the final round. We've got a 2-2 record so far, which is about as well as I do with Reanimator, which has Entomb in. I'm not a great Reanimator player, to be honest. So I think the deck has already proven that it works. Let's go to the final round and see if we can get a positive record. We lost the die roll for the final round, which is a shame, because our deck is obviously a lot better on the play. But being on the draw gives us the ability to just draw a card and discard it, if that's what we're all about. Which I think this hand is probably going to be exactly that. There is obviously some risk attached with this. If our opponent is running the Reanimates of their own, our opponent is a fan of the channel and very friendly. That's what we like to see. So turn 1 is probably we draw a card, we go to our cleanup, discard Griselbrand, and then next turn we can go Mana Confluence, Lotus Petal, and cast Animate Dead around a daze. Now, depending on what our opponent does, that might change things. Depending on what we draw, it might change things. But we're just going to keep this and see how we do. Devourer of Destiny ×2. So we're playing against Eldrazi. Eldrazi are traditionally very weak to Reanimator strategies. They are a Leyline deck, and our Stronghold Gambit plan is not very good against them because their deck is rammed full of creatures. So we'll see how things go. Ancient Tomb. And no play. Let's see what we draw. A Reanimate. Okay, so we just get to do the thing here, right? No, we don't have a way of discarding, do we? What am I talking about? we just go to clean up and we put the Griselbrand in the graveyard. There is an Eldrazi Temple. I'll play this Mana Confluence and this Lotus Petal. I would like to Animate Dead this. Our opponent could have a Kozilek's Command here. But if they're using Kozilek's Command for this mode, it's not the end of the world for us. Okay. The amount of time they're spending casting this makes me think they're paying for an X spell, so I'm pretty sure we're getting commanded here. The other option we had was to wait and discard another one, but then that's just two things they pick up. Or we can sit here doing nothing, and that doesn't help us either. So I think this is fine. Yeah, Kozilek's Command. So we're going to lose the cards in our graveyard, and they're just going to get a card. Awkward. But our deck is dedicated to doing this. We still have these Archon of Cruelty, so all we need to find is one of our 12 effects. Okay, so now we need to draw something that is one of our 1 mana effects if we want to reanimate this turn as well. We did not have that. So we could draw up is an option. Because we already have the 1 land here, I'm just going to pass. Because this is a viable strategy. Our opponent has access to Devourer of Destiny now. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we might just be seeing a big, massive creature here. Or is this going to be the same Michael? I can't blow up my lands. Take that. I found it. I found out how to play against Song Micah Spawn. Is to not have any lands in play. Excellent. We solved it. Okay. What are we doing now? A Shallow Grave. Not the one yet. How much is our opponent going to get ahead before we get to do our thing? But Shallow Graving and Archon gives us the ability to smash 2 of their creatures out. And one of them is probably going to be this Devourer, I would imagine. A Knoll Drifter. Wowzers trousers. Again, the way to play against this is to not have any permanents. So we've gone. Can I draw? Actually, we probably don't even care about what we draw here. We just need to go to discard and put like an Archon of Cruelty in the graveyard. I think it has to be Archon of Cruelty so that we have the option of wiping 2 of their guys. I do like having this Faithless Looting here. The problem with this is our opponent gets to wasteland our land and Devourer of Destiny away our guy. I think that is still what we're doing here. A Shallow Grave. We can do that next turn. So we probably just want 2 Archon of Cruelties in the graveyard rather than the Atraxa here. Just because we need the removal, I think. Are we dead if we reanimate this? We take 5, so we go to 10, but they lose one of their guys. No, we're not dead. Okay. If they have a Kozilek's Command, then we're probably dead. They did not have a Kozilek's Command. Good news. They lose their rubbish guy. We draw Undiscovered Paradise. Love this card. It's not great, but I love it. So if we can find a Lotus Petal, we can fire off a Shallow Grave. Our opponent gets to attack and eat our creature. Goodbye, our only permanent. Maybe we're not supposed to do that and we're supposed to just discard and then try and Shallow Grave out and get 2 creatures for 1. You can play one of your massive guys. It's a massive guy. Alright. Careful Study. Let's go for a Careful Study here. So this is not going to work because we played this land for turn. So we're 1 mana shy of where we need to be here. How many Lotus Petals in our deck? 2 Lotus Petals in our deck. We don't want to get rid of the Atraxa because we need the removal, which means we're getting rid of this. We can't get rid of the Shallow Grave. We get rid of the City of Brass here. So we need to Lotus Petal. We can't even hit what we need to, actually, can we? Because we have to discard cards. Nope, that's it. Yeah, a bit unfortunate. How are we going to deal with this, though? Removal spells are interesting against our creature deck, and I like Show and Tell. I don't particularly like the Stronghold Gambit here, because like I said, they're always going to have creatures unless they've got nothing. So maybe 8 cards want to come in. I think the Collective Brutality is actually less exciting. Like, the only thing it kills is Fleshraker and maybe the Lord guy that's not very good anyway. So we can get rid of those 4. And then, what do we do? I guess we have to worry a little bit about Chalice. Which means we're probably trimming on, like, maybe the Careful Studies go. Because leaving our stuff hanging in the graveyard isn't the best either. We're going to try it like this. Obviously, Collective Brutality can peek and take away their Kozilek's Command. Do I think Show and Tell on turn 3 potentially is good enough into our opponent's Wasteland deck? I don't think so. I believe in the power of Faithless Looting. Can get rid of this Firestorm. Okay, Leyline of the Void. That is okay. Not good okay, but it's okay. Faithless Looting, let's go. Now deck. Why you do this to me? We'll get rid of these 2. So we don't want to see Wasteland on our land. We just want to draw a monster. If we can get an early monster, it's going to be hard for our opponent to beat it. They got the Wastegate Battle Mage, just a 2-mana guy. Big monster, please. You're not a big monster. What are you doing to me? Alright, Faithless Looting. We don't want to reanimate, and I guess we pitch the City of Brass. And I will play out a Mana Confluence. We're not going to Faithless Looting yet, because then we have to discard 2 cards, and that doesn't end well for us. What fresh hell is this? Chalice for 1. Okay, so Faithless Looting is off. We just need to draw a big monster. We're odds on to draw one. Our deck's full of them. Animate Dead. I'll play this out to dodge things like Chalice. They've already played out one of their little friends. Okay. We'll take a hit from this. Cavern of Souls. Our opponent is certainly doing alright over there. 3 mana. Is this just... Okay, it's a Fleshraker. Sure. Come on, deck. Big monster time. Not a big monster. We can't cast... Well, we can cast this, but it gets countered by the Chalice. So we are just passing the turn again. Things can get a little sketchy once the Fleshraker's in play. They can just combo finish us with, like, looping Kozilek's commands. That usually only happens when they have an Ivugan in play, though. A Grim Monolith. Sure. This is effectively +2 mana this turn, because it gets the spawn as well. But it doesn't seem to be doing anything with it. Can we please draw the big monster? Give me the monster. We got 12 of them. 1 in 5 cards should be a monster, and we've gone through 15 cards of our deck at this point. So, statistically speaking, we should have found 2 monsters by now. Well, we should have found 3 monsters by our next draw step. So this has just been statistically unlikely for us. We didn't board any monsters out either. We just kind of got a bit hit by variance here. Lotus Petal, why are you doing this to me? All right, we're going to go to 2 and then go to 1 of our Mana Confluence, although we do have the Petal, so we don't have to tap the Confluence. Actually, no, the Confluence can... Because this isn't City of Brass, it only pays 1 life when you're making the mana off of it. If we're just tapping it for green mana from the Yavimaya, it won't hurt us. Is this going to ping us for lots of damage? Or no damage? Well, it's probably going to ping us for 1 damage, minimum. Okay, they're just tutoring. What are they going to find here? If they find any castable spell here... Okay, so they're going to Thought-Knot Seer. This is going to create a token that pings us for 1. This is going to look at our hand. And it's also going to ping us for 1 when it comes in. And then they're going to attack us for 2 and we're dead. GG's opponent. We did not get through that. Okay, the next card was a monster. So it took us more than 3 times what statistically should have been likely for us to draw a monster. So we definitely played the numbers there and just lost. Which is, you know, Magic the Gathering. Part of the reason the game is so good is because it has the variance and you're not just like playing chess. I love chess, but it's a very different sort of game and the variance makes magic. All right, so we finished with a 2-3 record, but that last round, the variance was against us in an unpleasant fashion in that last one. And one of the earlier rounds, I think it was the first round where our opponent had 1 blind draw and it was Force of Will. And that was pretty annoying. And then they had another good draw of having their 1 of Ghost Vacuum in their opener. So a bit tough. But I think the deck was fine. Let's talk about it. So this felt like a legacy power level thing to be doing. I'm not sure that all the numbers of everything is right, but just drawing and discarding to find your bits and pieces and then reanimating them is perfectly serviceable. What I did miss was a bit more of the fast mana. So because this build is running all these sorts of spells, we don't get to play Dark Ritual. So making turn 1 guys relies almost entirely on Lotus Petal. We could swap Careful Study out for another red looting effect, like Insolent Neonate, for example, or a main deck Firestorm. Those cards are not as good as for Careful Study for what our deck's trying to do. But if they are red, it means we could play Simian Spirit Guide as an additional piece of acceleration. So we have the ability to do turn 1 looting into Reanimate a little bit more often. So that is something to think about. I don't know if this is what a Reanimated deck should look like if an Entomb gets banned, but I think there's enough juice here. Like, these monsters are really, really good. And Wizards of the Coast love printing giant monsters, whether it's like Valvagoth or whatever. We're going to keep getting new, really, really strong monsters that are worth cheating into play. And reanimating them is going to be a fine way to do that. And what you will also have to remember is when Entomb... Well, sorry, if Entomb leaves the format, then people are going to play less Graveyard Hate. So a deck like this isn't going to get punished in the same way it is being punished in today's league. because, you know, the best deck is a Reanimator deck, and one of the best performing decks is another Reanimator deck in the form of the Mono Black Reanimator, which has got really good overrepresentation numbers. And then the other deck in Oops All Spells is very popular, so people need to pack lots of Grave and Hate for that. So I think there's a lot of things against playing a Reanimator deck like this, but when Entomb, or sorry, if Entomb goes, I think Reanimator is still viable in some way. I will try and record a video for next week where I play a different build of this that does have Dark Ritual and see if we go down a different path and if that is okay to Reanimate and play that game still. So yeah, I was quite happy with how this one panned out. I think you can definitely improve upon this, and I think all these really good Reanimator players out there, there are some dedicated like Reanimator players out there who are really good at Magic the Gathering, and they pound me all the time on leagues, like Reed Slay, for example. But yeah, there's a bunch of people who are playing Reanimator, and I'm sure they'll be able to work out something that is powerful and legacy viable in the new meta, because these cards are just so good that any way of cheating these in is going to be worth doing. Alright, thank you so much for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe, and goodbye. If you'd like to support me in the channel, please check out my Patreon. It has a free guide to budget turbo depths, as well as 3 tiers of support. A low cost one that enters you into my monthly raffle for a free donation deck on the channel, a mid-tier subscription that gives you access to my detailed turbo depths guide that is updated every month, as well as regular articles, and lastly the higher tier gives you all of the above, as well as a monthly donation deck for my channel. If you're interested in supporting the channel this way, please check out the link in the description.